Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm your host, Albert, and this is episode 339.
Lost in space.
Again, Julius? I thought we had
Still,
you back last week.
I don't know if you ever rescued me. I had to rescue myself.
Wow, okay. So you were lost in space and still are. Well, I don't know what we're going to do to get you back. This is unsettling.
Oh, Albert. So today we're going to be talking about Unsettled, the Lost in Space board game.
Okay, so Julius, I don't know anything about this Unsettled game. I've heard it many times. I don't know what it is. I didn't know what it was. I assumed it was some sort of, I don't know, fantasy card game or something.
I mean, it's a sci-fi card game, so you're not wrong.
But there's miniatures and stuff, right? So it's more
There's barely miniatures. There's miniatures in the form of player movers. It's not a miniatures game.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I had no idea what to expect. And now I see miniatures, and I've seen some boxes. I saw it at a game store recently, not my game store, and it seemed to be bigger than I had expected. But the box didn't seem to really say much on it, at least on the front. So I still don't know a lot about this game. Now I assume it's a space game, and I'm stuck in a ship.
Well, sort of like that. Let me lay it on you in the organized fashion that all our listeners are used to listening to us in. So, Unsettled is a survival puzzle adventure game where during each session, you are dropped on a hostile planet. You're essentially lost in space, traveling from planet to planet. And your job is to figure out how to survive. You're given a deck of tasks, kind of similar to like the Agenda and the Act deck in Arkham Horror card game or something similar like that in various other living card games, where you have a deck of tasks that you have to go through. And there is a whole environment usually composed of different parts of the planet, different environments, different things of the planet, and your job is to figure out how to use all those parts to achieve and fulfill your task. Achieve and fulfill your task, collect whatever it is that you're there to collect, and get thyself off the planet before you die. It is completely co-op, completely open information co-op, so to play it solo, you just play multi-handed. And don't die.
Okay. Is it a puzzle game, or is it going to be different every time? It's more like a tactical thing or something?
It is more tactical. It's not a puzzle like you're thinking of like a puzzle game or like Rush Hour or one of those. It's more just a puzzle of trying to figure out how to use the tools that are presented to you. So it's a puzzle like, Pandemic would be a puzzle, except Pandemic's puzzle is very mechanical in its form. And this one, the puzzle is sometimes it is about the same type of efficiency that you get in a Pandemic game, but it's also just trying to figure out how to interact and use the scenario and what it's giving to you to achieve whatever your task is.
Okay, so that sounds cool. That does sound like a fun game.
So what would you like to hear first about the game? How about components, Albert?
I would like to hear about that since it's next on the list. Especially those minis, because I saw one looks like a little egg with glasses or something.
You must be talking about Luna! Luna is my favorite part of the game. So in the game, you are representing a space explorer who's been pulled through a whirlpool, lost some various place. Luna is your robotic companion. Now, Luna is like huge and can fly. But Luna is your big robotic companion. Think a very friendly Alexa type thing. And she is represented by a big mini on the board, and all the players are represented by their own minis. It's one mold for each of them, just in the 4 different player colors, and Luna has her own mold for it. You'll be able to, on your turn, move the Luna mini around the board and be able to take actions with Luna, like scanning for resources or collecting data, things like that. She's big, she is cute, and she's adorable, and on each of the worlds, she has a card that is assigned to her for whatever her prime directive is. And we very much enjoy quoting all sorts of Wall-E things when we're playing this directive.
Okay, so she has sort of a Wall-E feel to her.
Yeah. She talks, but yes, she does. She doesn't actually talk. In lore, she talks. There's nothing mechanical or app-based in the game that actually makes her talk. But in lore, she does talk, and she says, error, function not working, whatever it is. Because things all the time don't work. So that is your player figures. Let's talk a little bit more broadly about the game. There is the core frame, the framework for it. The framework is going to be all the stuff that you're going to use every game. The first part of that is going to be all of the player boards. Each player board is going to be a 2-layer board with recessed slots for these big chunky dice, although the game specifically calls them cubes, since they're not dice, since you don't roll them, but essentially a die. You have these big dice that are tick-up dice that go 0, 1, 2, 3. And the two sides are just not used. They're just used to represent what type of die it is. So each player has these big chunky dice, and there's slots in your board for you to place those to assign them, because the dice will determine what actions it is that you're taking on the round. The board also has space for, and I'll call it your hit points, but it's called your endurance. And also space for your research track, which is how much research you're doing into the area, which lets you unlock special powers for the particular areas that you're in. Those boards and those tracks are part of the framework. They apply for every game, although the cards that you may slot into things are specific to the different worlds that you're on. There are also 4 environment boards that are going to be used again in each game, which are used to track very general type things about the world. The first board that you're going to have is going to be the resource board. The resource board is going to track how much data you have, how much materials you have, and how much energy you have. Again, all of these are going to be plastic formed trays, and part of the shtick of how they made these formed trays is that you try and leave the game. Unsetting up for one game is setting up for the next. So you are literally putting things away back into these boards, where next time you want to play, you just pull the boards back out and they're already set up. So this materials board is no exception. It has slots for all the different types for the 3 different types of resources, and they all fit in there. And those are just they're plastic tokens, they're plastic form fit of things. They're not just, the power has to be circles, the power is circles, the data is cubes, and the materials are, crystals like you would see in, Dollar type places. They're green crystals. So that is that board. There's another board where you put the science stuff. There are robotics, chemistry, and engineering sciences, as well as anomalies, which are special weird stuff about every single world, Luna's prime directive, and crisis cards, which I can't remember what the name of those ones are. But those ones will go off on their separate board. There's not a whole lot that sits there other than just those little level up tokens. There is a board that tracks your time. The time board, every time you take a turn, you are required to rest, which advances time. And time is going to be the timer for the game. Every time you make a loop around that time board, you'll have to give everyone a reduced endurance. Taking a reduced endurance means that you're going to be working towards losing the game by having everyone lose all of their endurance. That would be bad. The time board also tracks how synergistic everyone's being, whether or not they're all on the good side or the bad side of their personal player powers. But all that is tracked over on the time board. And then the last board is used to track the scenario stuff. And each scenario comes with a set of discovery tokens, a set of cards for the environment, and a set of tasks. The discovery tokens are put on that board. The tasks are put over by that board. The scenario cards are put over by that board. So that's one board that is mostly just empty and is used to keep track of all of those different scenario things. That is all of the core that is most of all the core framework stuff. All of the core framework stuff, it's durable, it's thick card stock. The plastic trays are all well-formed plastic. It all makes it easy to use. it is an absolute table hog even without setting up any of the planet stuff. Because if you're playing with a 4-player game, you've got 4-player boards, which are all these big shoebox size things. You have 4 boards for the planet already set up in the corners of your table. And you still have to leave over space in the middle of the planet. So it eats a lot of space, but it's all very pretty and it all sets up rapidly and nicely and easily. So for a game like this where A, every single planet is different, and B, you want it to be open and inviting to play, it achieves those purposes very well. So that is all of the framework stuff. Did you have any questions about framework before I go on to planet stuff?
No, I don't think so. But there's a lot of stuff in this game, isn't there?
There's a ton of stuff in this game.
It's not a small box. And there's many other boxes. There's like expansions galore.
So the framework itself all fits in a giant box, and the box is weird sized. It's like shoebox because the idea is you'll just stack all of those up. And on top of it, there's different planet boxes. Each planet box comes with all the stuff you need for a specific planet, and they're much smaller boxes. And you will take one of the small boxes. Actually, the framework box fits 2 of them, but you will take one of the planet boxes and combine it together with all of the other stuff from the framework and use that. So just one framework box and the 2 planet box that fits into it, it's not that big. You know, it's not that big. It's like 2/3 of a Gloomhaven type size, probably in all dimensions. It's about 2/3 of a Gloomhaven.
Wow,
so it's,
okay, that's big.
It's weird. It's weirdly sized, but it's not too huge. Once you get every single expansion, though, it starts to get huger.
Yep.
Now, granted, that's only if you get every single expansion.
When you're playing, you don't need every single expansion. In theory, you just need one, right? And you don't mix 2 together. So, okay.
You don't mix 2 together. And in my opinion, that is one of the strengths of the way they have created the core framework box. Because the framework box fits 2 expansion boxes in it. So when you want to take it to someone else's house, if you want to leave just the framework box on your shelf and put the other ones in a closet somewhere, it is a good size for just that amount there by itself. So, well, maybe I can have quibbles about I wish that it were not as awkwardly sized because it doesn't fit on my personal shelf well.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly understand where they're coming from, and it is a very movable friendly. It makes it very easy to take the framework box with you to game night and still swap in the different planets into that box, and makes it is much different than if I'm playing Marvel Champions, where I feel like I have to take every single, if I'm going to game night and I'm playing Marvel Champions, I either have to bring my deck, which is just a tiny amount. If I want to bring the game is everything. You don't have to feel like you have to take everything with you when you're going to take it to game night, which is great.
Yeah, I had the same issue with, say, like Lord of the Rings, where there's just a ton of content. Eventually, I finally just made a small box to store my deck that I'm using primarily, the scenario, and the game bits. And now I need a tiny little box and a game mat, and I'm set. And I got another box that's for 2 players.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very portable. And then when I want to switch stuff out, then I do that at home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that system.
That is exactly how they designed it for this.
Nice. They copied me.
Exactly. So in each of those planet boxes, there may be different things for the different ones, like some special tokens, but the general stuff that are in every single box. First, there's a set of cards. You'll generally use these cards in a grid fashion to form the map of the planet. So similar to Arkham Horror, the card game, it's formed of locations that are in a grid that you will move around these cards. The cards are full art. There's text and icons around them. It's all easy to see. It's all beautiful, stunning, amazing. Mm-hmm. The art definitely makes you feel like you're on another planet. It all looks really pretty, all looks striking, but none of that detracts from the experience. If anything, I think that the stunning art, to a degree, helps enhance the experience, because you will often see tasks or other cards referencing a specific place. With something like an Arkham Horror, quite often I'll need to read the name of the place and then scan all the names. With this one, the art is so big and dynamic and distinct that I usually can just see the picture from across the table, for example, and instantly go, oh, that's that one. I know
Okay.
where that one is. So very helpful.
Yeah. And the cards look like they're large squares, like a coaster, basically.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Enough room to fit a bunch of stuff and a bunch of text on it. Because often there is a bunch of text and a bunch of icons and a bunch of things on it. Not enough to overwhelm it. Tastefully moved around, but with plenty of room for all the pretty art. That same size big coaster square cards is the same size that you're going to use for your task cards. Generally, there'll be a deck of, it's 8 double-sided task cards, or 8 over 2 sides task cards, and you'll go through that deck, and that'll tell you how to set up the specific planets, where to lay out the cards, if there's any other special rules, things like that, and those will go there. There's also the decks for the different science that are specific to each one. So there's a deck for each of the different types of discoveries, robotics, engineering, and chemistry, as well as I mentioned before, those anomaly cards and those crisis cards, whatever it is the bad cards are, which are just not coming to mind right this second.
Okay. So you said the map is pre-generated. It's always the same basically when you play the game.
No,
Okay.
I did not say that.
So the rules tell you how to set it up, but it might be different. It might be like shuffle these cards and lay them out in a line, and then shuffle these other cards. But whatever it has, it's got rules for how to set it up, but it's different from game to game potentially.
Yes, it's different from game to game and also different from task to task. Let me just mention one thing before I come back to this point, because I want to discuss my thing first and then your thing. There are also these discovery tokens. Usually what happens is you'll be wandering around the board and you have an action, which is to obtain a moment, to try and discover a thing. And when you do that, you'll flip over a different deck of those giant square cards. And that will show you that there's a thing to go off and discover and do, usually like a little mini task. If you achieve that mini task, you'll be able to go pick up one of these discovery tokens, which are these little cardboard pieces that you'll pair up with an anomaly, and you'll be able to either expend that to do a thing, or you'll hold on to it and gives you some bonus, and those all change. Those discovery tokens, those discoveries that you're making and having to explore, are a major component of how it is that you succeed at the game. Returning back to your question about the setup of the board. Each of the planets comes with 3 task decks. Now, I have not seen all of the planets and all of the task decks. There are 9 planets that are currently available for the game. Each of those have 3, and in fact, there's a bonus box which has 3 more task decks, 4 more task decks with the first 4 or 3, I can't remember how many. But there's another couple extra task decks. I simply haven't seen all of them. That's 27 plays of it. The game takes a fair amount of time, and I'll be honest with all the listeners out there, my usual baseline to be able to review a game is 6. I'm at more than 6, but I'm not at 27. So I haven't seen all of them. From my experience with the ones that I've seen, the first task deck plays with a lot more open information. It will give you a specific format for the planet, a specific layout for the planet, and a lot of the cards will be open information. As the task decks go to some of the later versions, the amount of information available to you at first glance will reduce. It won't all be open information. There'll be a lot more of having to find stuff and figure even more stuff out. So it seems like the later task decks, or at least it seems to me, that the later task decks are more complex and also a little bit more randomized. Now, I don't think it's a problem that it's more randomized. It hasn't been for the games that I've played of it, but that seems to be the feeling and indication that I'm getting from it.
Okay. That is interesting. So a single game isn't too overwhelming components, it seems. It's well, said I'm looking at pictures of it, so I
was going to say,
myself.
It's not.
Yeah, but there is. You're right. There is a lot, but it's not too bad. I mean, you got the 4-player things, and then you got the map in the middle, and some cards here and there. The cards are different sizes. It looks like the cards are small.
There's either the big cards or the small cards. So the big square cards are the ones that form your task desk, that form the opportunities, that form the environment. And there's the small ones that are those science tokens and those anomaly ones that I was talking about. Oh, distress. That's what the bad stuff is. It's distress.
Okay, and those cards are like half size cards, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Little
mini
mini.
Euro or mini American.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're actually weird because all of the cards are they're not squared. They all have cutouts. Like
Oh,
um
yeah.
Battlestar Galactica reminded me of this because in Battlestar Galactica, for some reason, when they made that universe, they decided things aren't always squares. Usually they just have corners chopped off at random, and you see it a lot about Battlestar Galactica. So this one sort of reminded me of that. Stuff just has corners chopped off a lot of the cards. The cards are not square. There is a pack of sleeves that is available for the game where it can all become square. I actually tried sleeving my game. I prefer the game unsleeved.
Wow. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I just have a pile of sleeves that at one point in time I really need to sell. Yeah. But
So the
the
future
cards
has
are
its
weird.
corners trimmed. That is so interesting.
Yes. Yes, we're in corners trimmed.
It's like war games, where a lot of times war gamers will trim the corners of the counters. Same idea here. They're just trimmed off, and it's not just the cards; it's also the boards
I have no idea.
and the square cards too. Everything looks like it's trimmed, even the dice. Huh. Okay, so a lot of components. A lot of
Yeah.
components.
I mean, if you were to sit down at the table, then I would go through everything with you. I am concerned that you would, not that you specifically, I'm concerned that a player would be overwhelmed if I were to introduce everything too quickly. Don't do that.
I look at the picture and immediately I'm turned off. Oh, this is just too much complexity. I don't want to play this. This seems like work.
It definitely eases you in on it, though. It eases you in on it because when you start, you have your board and you have the planet to interact with. And a lot of the other boards are not immediately necessary or don't really provide much more than just, holding resources. It's nothing more than like a tray for wheat or stone that you'd see in another game.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ease into it, it doesn't feel too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then the game sort of eases you into it because the tasks get more complex as more stuff is happening on the world. And it has that build that you're looking for in sort of an openish world type game.
And for what I'm seeing, it doesn't look more complex than, say, a Terraforming Mars. Has a lot of different stuff and interesting boards and all that. Yeah, and that's not that bad.
I'd say it's probably on the complexity level of an Arkham Horror.
And yeah, that's a game that's gonna take a little while to explain, but it's not terrible, and it's you do it in layers. Absolutely. Okay, a lot of components. Let's move on to the theme then. It looks like it's very thematic. As you said, the corners are all cut, so
So
huge
we're in
joke
the
right
future.
there. Yeah, and the art looks great. It really does look nice and whatnot.
Yeah, the art helps bring it in. There is a lot of thematic elements that help bring it in. It very much gives you the idea that you are lost in space. It feels straight out of another version of that movie and that idea where you had the characters were lost in space and now they're trying to do things to achieve something. Perhaps the only issue to me is that you're lost in space, but there's not an overarching idea behind what it is that you're doing. So essentially, yeah, I'm lost in space and I've ended up at this planet, but why in the world did I go to this planet? It's just trying to kill me. Every single one of these planets is trying to kill me. So why in the world am I here?
Because you're lost. If you hadn't been lost, you would have avoided that planet.
Yeah, probably would have. So yeah, I would say it's minor,
Yeah.
but there's not an overarching story that exists to explain sort of stuff. And it was slightly hinted at the beginning rulebook about people sabotaging your spaceship and stuff like that. It hinted that there's some sort of idea to all of this, but in the end, it's really all about the planets. It's just a personal conceit that I would like to know more about the backstory that happened before we got to these planets, and I'm never rewarded with that.
So a little more theme would be nice. Yeah.
But with the planets, though, which is the most important part, all of the planets feel really heavily thematic. All of them really present the idea of the various planets, whether it's a matter that you're having to float above the ground or if there's these plants that are throwing exploding plants at you, or if there's a sentient planet that floods the world every once in a while, or if there's a gas planet that's taking over your mind, making you go nuts. Like, it all presents a strong theme, a strong idea that makes you really feel like you're in that world, like you're experiencing, you're understanding it in a card fashion. The only other thing that felt a little bit weird to me is, and I bring this up only because I've differed from some other people who play with me on this one. Part of your player board is you have these punch board tokens. You have, let's say you're the orange player. There's a picture of the orange spacesuit guy, and his head is missing. There's a spot where you can put his head. And you can pick one of these different avatars to be able to put them in. And because I have the get absolutely everything possible, I have a giant pile of all these avatars. It looks so weird with them there.
It does. It doesn't really match. It's like you see this cool spacesuit, and then all of a sudden it's the picture in the head. It doesn't seem to necessarily line up right. Your body's facing the left and the head to the right, sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's a little odd. I like the idea though. That's super cool.
I mean, the idea is good. I usually justify how you're seeing it, like this is their stats, so you can sort of see it's like an X-ray behind the helmet or some sort of idea. But frankly, if I'm playing by myself, part of the expansion set came with a set of just an orange or green, like they're helmets closed people. I just use the helmets closed people because that looks more normal to me.
Yeah. That's funny. And they don't do anything. They're just there to add a little flair to the game.
Yeah. And I just don't like them. And I had to bring it up because I've commented this to a number of people. I just don't like them, but other people really like them. So,
well, I'll say the pictures I'm looking at, it does look weird. It does look very strange there for sure. But I think it's a neat idea. You're right. Okay. Theme is pretty well done within a single game, but the overall,
I wouldn't even say the overall, just the backstory. I just wish there was a little more backstory. I don't know how they would ever get it because you're on the planets. It's too late for backstory. But I just want to know the backstory. I want a novel about these people.
Like I want there to be a campaign about it or something. You know, like something where you go from planet to planet and the story evolves.
Something like that. But I don't even want there to be a campaign. I don't want there to be a campaign. I don't want there to be a campaign. I just want them to release an independent novel about it so I can go read the novel on my own time when I'm not playing the game. I don't want the novel when I'm playing the game. I want to go read a novel during the time that I'm reading books.
All right. Okay, well, let's jump into the rules and then gameplay because, boy, we're
going late.
Savoring this game.
Yes. So, with regard to the rules, there are, if you wouldn't have guessed, two separate sets of rulebooks. There's the rulebook that explains the whole game, the framework, and there are rulebooks for your individual planets. The rulebook that explains the overarching game, it's pretty good. It explains the whole thing. The rulebook for the planet also, again, explains the whole thing. What I wish that the rulebooks for the planets had was a quick summary. You often see these in rulebooks for games, where it has on the side the very brief highlights of it. Now then, granted, the planet rulebooks are usually like 4 pages or so, but just a quick refresher. If I haven't seen it again, give it to me in like 2 sentences instead of like 2 paragraphs. That's what I would love to see, so that I could just pull out that and just have a refresher bit instead of reading the whole thing. Would be ideal. Mm-hmm. Not present. It's okay. I'll deal with it. Other than that, the rulebook's really good. The only issue I wish I had with the rulebook is something official that says, essentially, there's a rule that we have in Arkham, which is if you don't know a specific rule, don't hold up trying to look up the rule. Keep the game playing and interpret the rule in the fashion that is the worst for you. That is the Arkham rule. Just interpret it as worse as possible for you and look up the rules after you play the game.
Mm-hmm. And you're probably right.
You're actually not probably right because I've gotten it wrong a time or two. But I will generally, if I'm playing this, I will pick a planet. read the rules before I play the planet, which is the worst way to read the rules, by the way. It's the worst. But I will read the rules before I play the planet, and then try and not look at the rules as much as possible when I'm actually playing the game with other people. Or just play it solo by myself, but I haven't had a chance to do that with all of them. If I'm doing that, I have a number of times messed up, misremember the rule. There's not an official rule of, hey, just do what's worse. So I've gotten some pushback from other people about doing that when the rules don't say that that is the rule. And to them, I say, I don't care. It's my game, and that's how we're going to do this. So, ha.
All right. So rules. There we go. Gameplay.
The gameplay works as follows. Essentially, on your turn, you'll have some what are called focus actions and some free actions. The free actions are relatively short. You have a free action to move yourself around the board. When you move around the board, there are some icons that you may cross over as you're moving. If you cross over an icon, you get penalized or bonused with whatever the icon says, whether it's an extra research or some extra time that you have to spend, who knows. You have a free action to move Luna around the board. She doesn't have to pay those icons. So that might make it more useful to be able to use Luna to explore areas before you figure out what they are. That way you don't have to accidentally pay some costs that you didn't mean to have to pay. You have a free action to scan with Luna. There are some dice that you can roll that determine what sort of amounts of stuff Luna can scan with, whether it's data or materials, or just roll the corresponding die and you get that. And then there's some free actions that the scenario may give you, all sorts of different things based on what the scenario is. The core set of actions you have in the game are your focus actions. Everyone has 3 focus cubes. The red, the orange, and the green. Oh, the blue, orange, whatever it is. So, you have the 3 focus cubes. I don't know if the focus has anything thematic about those ones, but you have 3 focus cubes. You will put those focus cubes on any of the slots that are available to host a focus action. They look like big old square things where you put the focus cubes. It's very easy to tell if something is a focus action. It may be hard to notice it because it may be in different places than you expect, but you have 6 of them on your player board, so you'll definitely get used to doing that fast. You put a focus cube there, and it often will have an up arrow or a down arrow or multiples thereon. If it has up arrow, you add a pip to the focus cube, which is, again, those dice. So you click up the die, and if it was at 2, it goes to 3, etc. 3 is your max, 0 is your minimum. If you're at 0 and you have to push it down, then instead of having to push down the die, you instead have to spend time. Avoid that at all costs. Time is far too precious to be spending doing that. So, you'll push down your focus cubes by putting it there. The type of actions you can use with focus cubes differ for the most part. It's usually used to either find resources, interact with the other players, such as give them extra research, or help support them, give them additional stuff, or move yourself or them around the board. Or it can be used to interact with the environment. Again, find those opportunities. For the most part, those focus actions they don't take a whole lot of complexity to be able to just do them. The complexity happens with all the stuff that happens around when and how and what it is that you want to use them for. But the actions themselves are all relatively simple. All the stuff that comes from the core framework are all relatively simple. It's all the other stuff that happens that can be relatively complicated. The methods that the planet interacts with have some complications. Figure it out. Figure it out or die. I almost hesitate to perhaps spoil any more than just what the box says about what a planet is, because sometimes the surprises that happen are one of the best parts of the game. I've already accidentally spoiled one of them, and I'm going to do it again right now. For example, in one of them, which was the very first spot that we went to in Winora, there was this alien life-form giant tree planet tentacles thing, and for the first 2/3 of the game, our task was to help it out so that we can, I don't remember what we were trying to do, but we were supposed to be helping it out. And then when we flipped a card, all of a sudden it was trying to kill us, and it was throwing exploding toxic spores at us. And our whole job at that point was run like this thing is trying to kill you, which it was, and get back to the planet and get back to your spaceship and get off this planet, because all of a sudden it's trying to kill us. And that happened on my very first game. And I flipped over the card, and all of a sudden just the whole character of the planet had twisted, that this sentient life form that we thought we were trying to help has all of a sudden turned toxic. I'm like, oh shoot, He's time to leave, boys.
You might have set things up a little different if you'd known that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had the same thing in Lord of the Rings, yes.
Yeah.
You play in a scenario and something's going, okay, we're going to do this, and then you do it, and then you read the next card, because I like to reveal the story as I go. I don't like to read all the cards ahead of time. And then I find out, if I'd known, I might have done this differently. I might have, or like, so in the campaign mode, you finish the game and says, okay, now if you finished and it took you this many turns, this bad thing happened. So do it under that many turns. You should have told me that sooner, game. So yeah. Okay, don't spoil it anymore. I think I get the idea. I hope listeners do.
Yeah. So all of that, it's such an experience to be able to explore and interact with worlds, and some of those interactions change with the different tasks as well. So all of those things have much more complexity, much more involvement to be able to understand what the different things are, how you interact with all of those. So those are all really fun. But the core mechanics, the core gameplay is a simple enough core layer, and all the complexity, that's awesome. It's great. It's
nice. Okay.
It's really fun. I'm over here lowering so much praise on it, but it's because I really like it.
It reminds me also of Final Girl, similar, where you got this core game, and then each scenario you add in, each enemy or location you go to changes things a little bit and adds unexpected surprises.
Yeah.
It's fun. Okay, so this sounds like a winner's game.
I definitely think so. I think the only concern for why it wouldn't be a winner's game is just that it's huge. It's taking up, it's huge, it's expensive. The all-in pledge and the recent, so they had a Kickstarter recently. If you wanted everything with no sleeves, it was already, the retail value was $240 to go all in with all the stuff. It's an expensive game. To have that much stuff, it takes up a ton of room on my shelf. So I don't know if I can say ease into it or try someone else's, but I can't.
You don't need it all, also, right? You just need the base game in one location, and then you could play it, and then if you get bored of it, get a second location.
You could. Yeah, you could, because the planet boxes are sold individually. Yeah, you certainly could.
It's more expensive, I guess, but that might also. But you probably don't need it all, and if you're paying more, you may just stop sooner.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but I'm
missing the point. I know. I get it.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable, and I think that probably once you get into it, and especially once you purchase the frame box, the framework box, I expect you would want to continue to get more planets, because if you're enjoying the framework, if you purchase that and enjoy it, you'll probably want to get all the things, because all of them are really dynamic, really different. They all have very different experiences. So I think you'll really like and really want to have all of it, and I am really enjoying it. I really like it all.
And how much is it if I just want to try the game then? Just the minimum, the bare minimum. My guess is I'm going to guess around $100. I don't know. I'm just guessing here.
I'm not going to answer you without going and looking it up, friend.
Yeah. See, I kind of calculated how much my Lord of the Rings game cost recently, and so that's been a ton of money I've spent on that game, because I've gotten pretty much everything to come out. Mostly, not everything. And it adds up.
Yeah, so if you wanted, you could buy just the original framework and the first two planets for $90 straight from the publisher. Okay. I'm not seeing it elsewhere, so your estimate of 100 was relatively accurate.
Close, yeah. Okay.
But at that point in time, you're already in on the most expensive part of it.
Right. And how much is each location? Like
15?
15? Oh, yeah. Get a couple, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so the box didn't bring any, so you're going to buy one or two, and you can fit both in the box.
The framework comes with 2 planets, comes with the first 2.
It brings 2, okay.
And the first one being the one that I spoiled a bit. Or at least I spoiled the first task of it. There are 2 other tasks that do something different.
Gotcha, yeah. So, sorry, folks. You'll have to play the other one instead now.
Which is also a really good one.
Just throw out the first planet and just give up on it.
Just skip the task 2.
That's why there's 2 in the box, in case somebody spoils one of them.
Just skip the task 2, and then you'll be fine. You'll be golden.
Okay, well, we won't dwell on it anymore. Maybe people will forget what it was already, and that'll be good for them. All right, should we lift off, Julius?
Blast off, Albert.
Blast off. Find a different planet. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Have a good night, all. Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractaloon on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.